go. Look at this. Yeah.
Justin Trudeau was clearly embracing the weather and the ice fishing in Pikangikum today.
Here we go. This is the Northern Pike.
He's the first Prime Minister to visit this remote Ojibwa community of 3,000 people in northern Ontario.
Come on, you got it. It's good to eat.
A lot of laughs on the local lake, but this was also a serious visit to talk about big problems.
And I know the community is very pleased to have the very first Prime Minister ever set foot on our reserve.
Trudeau had promised to visit after a fatal fire killed 9 people in a home 2 years ago. The lack of housing is still so bad that families have to sleep in shifts. There's no clean running water. 3/4 of the population is under the age of 25, and the suicide rate is one of the highest in the world.
But I also want to hear and I want to learn.
At the local high school, Trudeau faced polite but pointed questions.
What are you going to do about the ever-increasing suicide rates in this community?
Underage youth start drinking and sniffing gas. What are your plans to rehabilitate?
What are your plans to renovate the houses to help us get running water in our daily lives?
Trudeau says he's determined to work with community leaders to help tackle the ongoing suicide crisis, but also to give people hope for the future. That includes clean drinking water and better housing.
We know that unless you can start with safe, secure, adequate housing, it becomes difficult to succeed at anything else in life.
The federal government is also spending $60 million to connect Pikangikum to the Ontario power grid this year, allowing it to scrap its old diesel generator for a reliable source of electricity for the first time. Margaret McDermott, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, Pikangikum is hardly the only First Nation with problems affecting young people and their mental health.
I get calls every single day from a youth that says, I feel like killing myself.
That was Andrew Baer. He's an Indigenous man from Saskatchewan with a difficult past who's now trying to empower First Nation youth and make sure they have a future. Olivia Stefanovic has his story.
How many of you know you're awesome? I want to help you with that.
Andrew Baer is on a mission.
I'm awesome! Come on, let me hear you.
He's trying to teach kids to love themselves.
You know why? Because you are awesome.
His lessons don't come from textbooks, but life experience.
Being a former gangster, being a former drug addict.
Baer says he spent 15 years in prison for second-degree murder.
A lot of the kukums and mushrooms were praying for me while I was in the penitentiary and giving up. I gave up. But if they had given up, I may not have been out today.
After his release, Baer turned his life around. He decided he wanted to help Indigenous youth, and for the past decade, he's been holding workshops on First Nations across the country to try to stop the suicide crisis.
The suicide prevention that's being taught out there is not working.
Baer uses his story to empower youth, meeting with students as early as kindergarten and motivating them to speak up about depression and suicide, the leading cause of death among Indigenous youth in Canada.
What do you think Canada is missing about the conversation and the issue of suicide amongst especially Indigenous people across the country?
Well, one of the big things is trust.
Baer says he also trains counselors on their approach to mental health.
If you don't know what to say about yourself that's good, how do you expect these young little youth to say something good about themselves?
Today, he helped 13-year-old Zoe Tawiaka.
Sometimes I hurt too much, so that workshop actually helped me.
Community leaders say they're starting to notice a difference.
Well, that's a big thing because a lot of our students are systematically protecting themselves and over the number of years of residential school abuse and stuff like that. So it's hard for them to speak out.
This little light of mine.
It's Baer's hope that these kids will continue using their voices to help themselves inspire others, and save lives.
Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Standing Buffalo, Dakota Nation.